Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'll be reviewing Vampire the Masquerade Rivals from Renegade Game Studios. Is this expandable card game perfect for gamers regardless of their investment level into VTM? Or would you have to be a diehard Vampire the Masquerade fanatic to even consider adding this game to your collection? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I am going to be reviewing Vampire the Masquerade Rivals in just a moment. But first, I want to once again thank all of you out there who have sent along really kind thoughts and prayers regarding my recent triple bypass surgery. It's been just over 5 weeks. As you can probably hear, my voice is actually getting back to normal, and I feel really good. My doctors also point out that I am doing exceptionally well. So, big thumbs up. And all those kind thoughts and prayers are really, really appreciated. Thank you so much. So today, I am going to be reviewing Vampire the Masquerade Rivals from Renegade Game Studios. It's designed by Dan Blanchett and Matt Hyra, with artwork provided by Saba Bernath, Cold Castle Studios, Marco Primo, Darko Stojanovic, Drew Tucker, and Amy Wilkins. This game is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in around 30 to 70 minutes, and does carry an MSRP of $45. This game is out right now. Swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Rivals kind of set up. We'll talk about this a little bit. But before I dive in, I do want to mention that the fine folks over at Renegade Game Studios were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts with you. These days, it's really important that you know that. All right, so the premise of Rivals is that each of the players is leading a rival vampire faction who are vying for control of San Francisco. So before we start talking a little bit about the game itself, and I will point out, I am not going to go into some super deep dive in the how to play. I'm going to give you a kind of an overall feel for the game, but there are a lot of little things that go on that it's depending on if you play a card, this might happen. So there are a lot of just little items that you have to refer to in the rule book as you're learning how to play. I'm not going to get into each and every one of them. So first off, component quality, pretty nice. Nice thick tokens here. Cardstock on the cards is fine. They are not linen finish or anything like that. Do want to point out, you are going to want to sleeve your cards because, of course, this is an expandable card game. You're going to be shuffling these cards. Also do want to point out, some of the cards had a little bit of foxing along the edges here, and that was kind of, wait a second. So once again, actually, I'm not actually showing you a, here we go. There's another one here. I was going to say there's one of the factions is, there's a few of the cards where it's almost like they were stuck together and lifted off a little bit. So definitely do want to sleeve these cards to not only protect them, but to cover up those blemishes as well. Because it'd be like, oh, it's that card again, huh? Anyway, got a rule book here. Do want to point out, there's a lot of rules for a card game here. Over 20 pages of rules. And the funny thing is, the basic mechanics of what you do on your turn is pretty simple. It's just all these little things that can come up. You have to refer to the rule book. And I got to say, I got to ding the game a little bit for that, because especially this one mechanic kind of really just brings the proceedings to a screeching halt. But there's quite a bit that I do like about the game as well. So it's important for me to point that out. This is not going to necessarily be a negative review. All right, so each of the players is going to start off. They're going to have their basically their clan deck, then their faction deck, which includes 7 vampires. You're going to have your city deck, which you're actually going to draw a card. Each of the players will draw a card at the beginning of their turn. So let's put that back. Let's pretend we've got a 2-player game going on here. So each of the players will also have an agenda card that's going to tell them how they're going to earn precious agenda points, which is one of the ways how you win. And each of the factions also has a haven, so which will give that faction a special ability as well. So you're going to start off with a vampire. When you're first beginning, you're going to go in and you're going to take the vampire who's got the highest blood rating, and you're going to make them your leader. And you have 20 prestige points. And these prestige points also double as blood points. If you run out of prestige points, and there are multiple ways for you to lose prestige, if you hit 0, you lose, game ends. You've been knocked out of the game. But do want to point out, each of the factions does have a pre-constructed deck. And it's very important when you're first learning how to play, stick to the pre-constructed deck. There are over 60 additional cards that have more vampires and more faction cards and things like that. But stick with the pre-constructed decks. It's easier to learn how. There is basically, since this is an expandable card game, there is the ability to build your own decks. But before doing that, learn how to play the game, because there's quite a bit going on here. And each of the factions is going to have a little bit of a different strategy to approach as well. So for an example, one of the big ways that the Toreador faction, which is what I'm controlling here, is able to get these agenda points is by basically getting a citizen as a retainer to one of my vampires. That will earn me an agenda point. If I get 13 agenda points, I win. First player to 13 agenda points is the winner. Second way you can win is defeating your rival, knocking your rival out of the game. Now, of course, obviously enough, in a 2-player game, your opponent is your rival. But in 3 or 4 players, you're going to randomly determine who your rival is. So you're aiming at knocking out your rival. Now, of course, you're up against all the vampire clans, but it's most important to take the fight to your rival. If somebody else knocks your rival out, the game is going to end, but you don't win. You win if you knock your rival out. If another player knocks your rival out, what you're going to do is the player who was knocked out is going to lose all their agenda points. Then you're going to total up your agenda points, and whoever's got the most is the winner. If there's a tie, the tied player who is furthest away from being the first player is going to be the winner. So there's a few different ways for you to win the game. So on each turn, what you're going to be doing is you're going to start off, you're going to draw a card. So for an example, here we've got a couple of retainers we're probably looking to make our human thralls, especially the student, because that would not only gain me 1 agenda point for doing it, I get a bonus agenda point. So that's cool. So that'd be 2 agenda points. So when you flip over the card, you're going to look to see what it is. If it's an event, it's just going to be, if it just says event, it's one and done. You do what's on the card and it's discarded. If it says ongoing, what you'll actually do is you're going to actually take one of your prestige counters that's from the standard supply, not from your own supply, but from the standard supply. You're going to put it on there because these are color coded. Everybody's got a different color. And what that indicates is this event is going to take place all throughout the turn until it comes back to your turn again. Same with other cards that you have in your deck that say ongoing, you're going to do the same exact thing. So once it would come back, say to my turn again, that would be gone. It'd be discarded. So there are also mortals here who are fighting the vampires. So it's possible for you to lose vampires to the event deck, the city deck, in essence. So each of the players is going to start off with 4 cards. You're going to draw 4 cards from your deck. First player is going to get 1 vampire card from their faction deck. Everybody else will get 2. So once you've done your beginning steps, you're going to move on to your actual turn. You get 2 actions. So one of the actions is recruit a vampire. So you can recruit a vampire. It doesn't cost you anything outside of applying the blood points. So each of these vampires have special abilities too. So you want to make sure you pay attention to what the special abilities actually do. So there you go. So that would be one of my actions, recruiting a vampire. Another action would be to draw a card. I can draw a card from either deck. I can draw a card from this deck or that deck. Doesn't matter. That's what you're able to do there. So I could also, there's what's known as titles. Once again, I'm not going to get into detail about it. But there's a title called Prince of the City, where it is very valuable to have titles. And that is the most valuable title. If that happens to be out, that's part of the city deck. If this happens to be out here, I can lay claim to it. And then what'll happen is the other players are going to fight me to try to prevent me from claiming that title. So that's something else that I can do. I can also play a card. So I can play an action card. It has to say that it's an action. So you see here, this says unhosted action. And then here I have action. If it's anything that's unhosted, so for an example, when I recruited this vampire, that was considered to be unhosted. So I can play this. It still counts as an action, but I don't have to exhaust a vampire. Anything else, for an example, if I play this action here, which is a scheme, I would have to exhaust a vampire in order to play that. So what I'll do is I will... Yeah, okay, just for the heck of it, just to explain something here. I'm going to play Mercy, this action, which is a scheme. Now, this is one of the aspects of the game. This is what I was talking about, where something pops up that, in my opinion, kind of brings the proceedings to a screeching halt. And it's this influence conflict. So what happens is, it's kind of a, hey, do you want to do this? For everybody at the table. Or some are choose another player and you get to decide. So basically what it is here. So this says, should each player mend 4 blood, which is basically if she had taken damage, let's say she's down to 1 blood, basically healing a character either in the coterie, which is here, it's my collection of vampires, part of my clan, or in torpor, which is if I lose all the blood points, but I don't take aggravated damage, because if I do, then this basically destroys the vampire. But if I lose all the blood points from a vampire, they go to what's known as torpor, and they gradually gain blood back. And as they gain the blood back, actually, it'd be 1, not 3. When they get back up to their total, they would rejoin the coterie. So what happens here is we're gonna like vote. So everybody is gonna take influence. So for an example, that's a point of influence because that's the leader. There's other ways for you to get influence for the vampires and things like that. So you'll have these points of influence that you can also bolster with your prestige, and then it's basically a vote. So if I had 3 points and I said yes, and somebody else had 2 points and said yes, and the third player said no and they had 1 point, well, the yeses would carry the day. And then we would do what this is. Now, you can wheel and deal and promise things. There's certain restrictions to it, but you can promise different things to other players. And I get where it comes from. I understand it's like the diplomacy between the clans and all these other things. But I really do think it really brings the game to a screeching halt. All right, something else you can do during your turn is attack. Now, in order to attack, your vampires have to be out on the street. And you can move your vampires out to the street whenever you want during your turn. So let's say I had them out on the street. That was the first thing I did for my turn, as opposed to recruiting a vampire and playing that other card. Let's say the first thing I do in my turn is I move them to the street. Well, I can also attack. And we have physical, social, mental attacks. We have different kinds of attacks. So it'll show you, there's a little icon right here. So that is a social attack. Now, one of the interesting things that I like about the game is when you're playing a card that's not unhosted, when you're playing a card that's going to exhaust a vampire, you must have equal to or greater than the rating up here. This is the blood rating up here. So as an example, I'm in luck right now because both of these vampires are pretty powerful blood-wise. So over here I've got Lizu Chen, and she has a social attack of 2. Now remember, I would want this. So what I might do is, my first action, I might play this unhosted action. This is ongoing. So I'd put that there. It says, during a social attack against a city deck mortal, I exhaust this card and the attacker deals +1 damage to the target. Sorry. Didn't realize. Couldn't see the writing on that. So that could be my first action. Then the next action would be, I'm going to attack. So I would have to exhaust my leader here to make the attack. And I can play an attack card. So I'll play, just for the heck of it, I'm going to play Seduction just to show you how this works. So I could play this, and it says choose one. Steal 1 blood from the target, so if I was attacking a vampire. Or this attack deals +1 damage to a city deck mortal for each of the, I think it's a little star icon. See, that's one of the things. Some of the print is kind of small. Some of the icons are a little tough to make out. So it's actually this little icon here. So effectively I would have 2, 3, because I've got that icon. And then here I could exhaust this to add an additional damage. So now I'm at 4 damage and able to add this mortal as a thrall. I have to equal or exceed this number here. So I could take this student retainer. So I've defeated her. I've brought her over to our side. So that would go under here. And remember, it showed there's one agenda there. And our agenda actually is to recruit these citizen retainers. So I would essentially get 2 agenda points. And then you just keep them right there. And then you're going to continue. Everybody's going to be taking their turns. For an example, I can attack other vampires. So once again, you have to be on the streets to make attacks. But you can attack into a haven. Only thing is, most of these havens, in fact, all of them with the pre-constructed decks, have what's known as secrecy. So for every point of secrecy, you have to discard a card from your hand. And remember, you only have 4 cards. So you have to discard a card from your hand to make the attack into a haven. Now, as an example here, I could have other vampires attacking the vampires on the street. They don't have to make that discard because we're not in the haven. So once again, as I mentioned, when you lose all your blood tokens, they do not go back to your prestige, by the way. You just toss these into the general supply. Then you would actually take your vampire and put them into torpor. And you would actually give them 1 blood point. They can't return until they get all their blood points back. So then you go to the end phase. So in the end phase, you're going to add 1. So really the first turn that you lose the vampire, they're going to get 2 back. And then one of the other things we've got, let me go in here. Here we go. Special Affairs Division. So these are antagonists. These are ongoing. So let's pretend I had pulled that. Whoops. It doesn't matter. It can be a 1 or 3. All that matters is the color. So what happens here is they're actually attacking us. These are humans that are trying to kill the vampires. So that you'll take care of as well. And then you get to draw back up to 4 cards. So that's basically it. So keeping in mind, you can actually draw more cards in your turn, because remember, one of them is an action. You can draw a card as an action, and then at the end of the turn, you get to draw basically 2 cards. So you're going to continue on until somebody has 13 agenda points and they automatically win, or somebody has knocked out all the vampires. So something like this, they're in torpor. And of course, you can have more than 2 vampires, obviously enough. You've got your deck right here. But if you've got all of your rivals' vampires in torpor, or they've been destroyed because of a special kind of damage that can be inflicted, they're removed from the game. They're gone. They don't regenerate. But if your player has no active, if a player has no active vampires, then they are out. They've been knocked out. So remember, if you knock out your rival, then you're a winner. And if somebody else knocks out your rival, then the game's going to end. Everybody's going to total up their agenda points. Whoever's got the most is the winner. In case of a tie, the tied player furthest away from being the first player is going to be the winner. All right, so that is pretty much how you play Rivals. Let's swing on over to the other camera, and I will share my final thoughts and give this a review score. So I like I like Vampire the Masquerade Rivals. I like it. I don't love it. It didn't like really knock my socks off. I like a lot of aspects to it. For one, I like the city deck because it's kind of like different events going on and it's kind of cool. And then, of course, you've got the mortals that you can, put under your sway that will give you bonuses and things like that. So I like that. I like the artwork. I think the component quality is pretty good overall. Once again, do you want to point out there was some foxing on some of the cards and some of the cards were stuck together. So the backing, so that kind of sucked. But all in all, the premise of the game is cool. I don't think you need to be like nuts about Vampire the Masquerade to want to play this game. I think if you are a big fan of Vampire the Masquerade, you're probably going to give it a higher review score than I'm going to give it. But you don't have to be like a big VTM fanatic to like it. There are some aspects of the game that to me don't make a whole lot of sense, like the whole, okay, so should we do this? Yes or no? And let's take the influence, and it's the influence conflict. Like I said, that kind of comes out of left field. I'm not a big fan of that. And like I said, it kind of slows down the game a bit. So I don't care for that either. I am curious to see what kind of direction this game goes in. It is an expandable card game. So let's see what comes out. I know there are other factions out there. There are other clans from Vampire the Masquerade. I'm kind of curious if that's what we're going to see as far as expansions, where it's just going to be new clans. Are we going to see some new mechanics and things like that? I'm not sure. The game is super easy to learn how to play right off the bat. Like I said, when it's your turn, you get 2 actions and you've got so many options available to you, and you can double up on the action. So if you wanted to, if you had 2 vampires in your hand, you want to recruit 2 vampires, boom, there you go. You want to make an attack, make another attack, you can do that as well. So all that's really easy. It's just when we run into these little things like, okay, well, this is a scheme, and now we got to figure out how do we resolve a scheme, and okay, so this is conspiracy, and how do we resolve that, and titles, and there's all these like just little additions that I think makes this a little crunchier than I would have liked to have seen for this sort of a game. That said, I do like it. I will recommend it. I give Vampire the Masquerade Rivals a 7.5 out of 10. And like I said, if you're a big Vampire the Masquerade fan, you can probably put an extra point on that. All right, so that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs right here on YouTube, as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at tabletop games. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until next time, here's hoping you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel? Or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch? Or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel? And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.